Happy Saturday, viewers. It has to be your favorite day of the week because you get to hang out with us here at the Poets Lighthouse. I am, as always, your host of the show, Finn Bell. Our guest today in the Lighthouse, Remei Manzanero, writes poetry as a means to explore the unfathomable. Hello.
Hello, female. It's a
How are you
pleasure.
doing? It is such a pleasure. So, folks, Rene likes to use poetry as a means to explore the unfathomable, to digest the world, putting what remains of it into words. Today, she affirms that she keeps writing because she doesn't know any other way to live. Her first published poetry book, La Verdad que no vemos, the title being translated as The Truth We Don't See, was awarded the 16th Águila Poetry Award in 2020. Remei is also author of Habitantes de un Paraíso Minúsculo, its title being translated as Inhabitants of a Tiny Paradise, that had been awarded the second poetry contest of La Equilibrista to be published in the forthcoming year. She has also self-published two poetry chapbooks, The Confession of the Flesh, Emptiness Disdain, and The World of Pillows. Remei was awarded finalists on several occasions for her first actual poetry book, saying that she would not change a single verse, and she still keeps unpublished and saved in an old wine box. She performs at various events in the underground poetry scene of Barcelona. Apart from writing poetry, Remei teaches Spanish language and literature in a high school and is currently writing her PhD dissertation on language methodology. Remei, what an absolute pleasure it is to have you here in our virtual studio.
Hello, thank you very much, female. It's my pleasure. I'm very, very grateful.
It's exciting to have a breath of fresh air from Barcelona, one of my favorite places. um, so I have to say that line again from your bio: unpublished poetry saved in an old wine box. I really adore that idea. Imagining it much like good wine, refining itself by some magical alchemy with time. How essential to your writing practice are those works that are written, but perhaps go unseen by any other eyes but yours?
Actually, I love this question because this book, it's an entire book that is kept in this box, and it's the most important one. It's the book that I really loved, and it's the first one that I really wrote and finished. It was the first time that I realized that it was a piece and that I didn't want to touch anything at all. But for
Mhm.
some reason, it was really hard to me to give it to the world. So I kept it for a while, and then I wanted to edit it, and but I couldn't change anything. So at the end, I decided to send it to some contests and awards. It never won. Sometimes it's finalists, as you said, but it never won. And I usually read it in front of people. I perform it, and
Mhm.
it's a hard book, a very because it's about learning how to walk,
Ah,
and it's about a past experience that I went through. It's a very simple experience. So I broke a leg, and then
oh.
I couldn't write for all that period of time, but when I recovered, I wrote
Mhm.
everything, like almost in, I think it's just a month, and then I kept it there. And I love that book, and it's essential. But then, for some reason, I published another book, La Verdad que no vemos, which
Mhm.
is the one that everybody knows me for, right? And yeah.
I truly love the way that you phrased um, what needed editing or what you needed to do prior to giving it to the world. I just love the way you phrased that. Um, dear viewers, we are going to go to break, but when we return, let us please get to know our charming guest more, shall we? Welcome back from the break. Joining us tonight from Barcelona is poet Remei Manzanero. Today, she is so gracious to share some of her original works with us. Remei, will you please?
Yeah. So first of all, what I brought here today, what I wanted to share with everyone was the first book that I wrote. It's a very short book. I haven't got it here with you, but it's a book that it's called La Verdad que no vemos, which means the truth we don't see. And it's not about the truth that we can reach and that it's outside of ourselves, but it's a truth that we share and we build. It's among us, and this is all it's about. And it's a truth that we don't see because we are normally very busy with other things, but the essential is always in the dialogue, in the conversation that we have with other people. And I think that's the most important thing in life. So this is what the book is about, and the poems that I want to read are gonna be from that book. Yeah. La verdad que no vemos está aquí. Déjame que te lo muestre en este pequeño espacio de aire, esta dimensión, toda esta anchura de trazas, de briznas aciculares, está en esta brisa ingenua que tanteo con los dedos, que trato de asir para hacer mía. Es de sí misma, está aquí. Está en este soplo hecho de desgarros, está en el lápiz que me cae de las manos si abro la palma, está en esta corriente alterna, está en genios y mediocres, en las nubes de las partículas, en las ínfulas extrañas y en el pliegue de las alas de un cóndor negro, en la precipitación de un vidrio que no nos hiere apenas y en los resquicios invisibles de nuestras cicatrices más finas. Está en el cieno de los ríos que arrastras a las cimas, en la cima lozana que hallas en la mirada, las miradas tiernas que no adviertes y las que adviertes. Está aquí, no puede estar en ningún otro lado. La recogemos. Este soplo que resollamos está hecho de ella, este vasto espacio que media entre tú y yo, los lugares entre nosotros que no habitamos y que alcanzamos al vuelo con esfuerzo y devoción de céfiro. La verdad es que es esto, está aquí. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. Oh my goodness. I believe that you have the English transliteration for that. But before we go into that, I want to ask you a little question about the poem. So this poem, La Verdad que no vemos, the truth we don't see, was the transliteration title. It reads as if existing in an often overlooked crevice, a secret codex we have handled carefully to find out how it opens. It feels to me somewhere between a seemingly intimate communication. We are heeded to look inward, to listen. Does our desire to extract knowledge from so much external noise divert us from the truth?
Yeah, actually, you put it in the exact words that I couldn't 5 minutes ago. So that's actually the idea, right? Because we are trying to look for the truth somewhere where it's not, right? And then at some point you realize that it's just between you and I in this exact moment. It's just here. It's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that. Yes. That's so beautiful. If you would please honor us with this carefully, beautifully crafted transliteration of your original poem.
Okay, let's go with that. The truth we don't see. It's here. Let me show it to you in this little space of air, this dimension, of this width of traces of vesicular strands. It's in these ingenious wrists that I grope for with my fingers, that I try to grab to make it mine. It belongs to itself. It's here. It's in this breath made of tears. It's in this pencil falling from my hands if I open my palm. It's in this alternating current. It's ingenious and mediocre. It's in the particles, clouds, in the strange lappets, and in the fold of a black condor's wings, in a plunge of a glass that hurriedly hurts us, and in the invisible cracks of our thinnest scars. It's in the silt of the rivers that you drag to the summits, on the lush peak that you encounter in a look, the tender looks you don't notice, and those that you notice. It's here. It can't be anywhere else. We pick it up. This breath that we pant is made of it. This vast space intermediating between you and me, the places between us that we don't inhabit and we reach on the fly with effort and separate devotion. The truth is that it's this. Here it is. Thank you.
Beautiful. I hardly ever have to say this about poems that are translated. Usually, I prefer to look at them in their original language because, obviously something is lost a little bit or a lot in the translation. I think that was done as beautifully as it was in the original language, and that is kudos to you as a wonderful translator. You just put it in the English language, the essence. I still felt the exact essence of it. So Remei, I can relate so much to poetry being this way to process, like what you said, your experience of the world into words. I cannot help but liken this to humans in the beginning, witnessing natural phenomena and assigning explanations to them, often as, divinity, deities. Once the experience is consumed and digested by you, are there any ideas that accompany the words formed at the other end, um, sometimes meant to remain obscure to everyone but yourself? In that moment from it being with these sensory experiences to
Yeah.
being the idea forming into words, and then the words that you are trying to impart as a poet to your listeners, to the people who listen to your poetry. Is there a portion of it that is just never meant to be it's meant to remain mysterious and obscure for a reason? The experience of it,
Mm,
the distillation of the experience to words, if that makes sense at all.
yeah, I think I'd say so. There is a process, right? And you do
Yes.
kind of a digestion, right? Like you digest reality or realities if you want. And then, so there's the reality. And then you have to put that into words. And that's how you experience actually the world. So there's no such a real reality to put it
Mm-hmm.
somehow. So the only reality that you have at the end is those words. But then at the same time, some of those words or the concepts that are behind those words
Mm-hmm.
remain obscure for yourself and also for the people you're reading to or you're sharing your poetry with. So there's a difference between these three things, I'd say: the reality, the way you digest that, the words that you have in the result of that, and
Mm-hmm.
then how people understand what you are actually communicating. I don't know if I actually answer your question.
No, no, no.
Did
You
I?
absolutely did, because it's always been a thing. That's probably what the first thing that people would say when they say that they're not into poetry or they don't understand the purpose of poetry because it's so obscure. That's a common thing that they say often, that they're not wanting to understand it. So there is like that separation, and I wonder if a lot of that has to do in the fact that the way we perceive it. But you explained that beautifully, because from the moment of the concept to how it's perceived, it's going to be perceived in 100 million or even a million varied ways from person to person. It's very much art. It's
Yeah,
perceived
actually,
differently.
now you made me think, because I'm also a high school teacher, right? And then
Okay.
that's what my students say, that it's obscure, I can't understand this poem. And then you kind of do a sort of translation of what the poem says so it can
Mhm.
be understood somehow, but there's no other way to express poetry. The problem sometimes is that we express it too obscure, and at least in my case, my in my last 3 or 4 years, what I'm
Mhm.
trying to do is trying to make my language, I wouldn't say simple, more simple, but I'd say more pure. So I want to go to the
That makes
center of
sense.
the concept and not just putting words that don't need to be there. And it's actually what I did with the book. So the book was really long, and then I was just cutting all the poems that didn't need to be there, that were not related to the main topic of the book. And then also in every poem, I was just cutting all that obscure words that don't really do anything at all in the poem, except for just confusing, right?
I
Yeah.
can totally be on board with that sort of journey as a poet. It does come down to you not simplifying it, but making it more pure because you know as we go along our journey as poets, we do
Mm.
gain more knowledge, we do gain more confidence in our ability to relay these messages in the more pure essence, in the most pure essence, and it doesn't need all the icing. It just needs the truth of it,
Yeah, it's a journey
honestly.
to the essence. It's,
Yes,
yeah, that's it.
exactly. So thank you so much for that. I love that discussion just over that topic. Um, but, I can never turn away a good reading, another beautiful reading of a poem. So I understand that you have another poem that you would love to share with us, and we would love to hear another poem from you.
I do. I'm going to explain a little bit about this poem because it can sound a little bit different from the one that I read before.
Hmm.
So this one is called Mandíbulas de Violencia, which means jaws of violence. So we've said before that the truth is between us or among us,
Hmm.
and this poem is actually the opposite in the sense that it's about violence. It's dedicated to my best friend who unfortunately had an episode of violence, of what I would say in Spanish, we would say free violence, that it's for anything at all, just with
I
no
see.
reason violence. And it's one of those moments in which you see that that truth that we don't see is actually completely broken.
I see.
And this one, I'm going to go only in Spanish, but I think the sense of it can be understood. And it starts talking about all the blood that is on the floor, and then about how his face ended up
Mm.
in the worst sense ever. So I go with it. Mandíbulas de violencia. Había tanta sangre en el suelo que se podía ver reflejado. Así me lo dijo, entre espasmos y cicatrices, y la mandíbula ya nunca encajó como antes. Decía, entre contento y resignado, que al menos el cirujano lo dejaría guapo. No podía haber sido de otra manera, los entresijos de la vida destrozando partes de sí misma, sueños, empeños, esfuerzo en los puños, el tiempo irreparable, el titanio en su cara irreemplazable. Hay un espejo disecado de sangre en el suelo. Anda la violencia, suelta por la ciudad. Gracias, thank you.
Gracias. Ah, so powerful.
Make
Um,
me,
yeah, I could tell. And some things just transcend, um, you know, mere words, mere language. I know that's a little sacrilegious to say as a poet because we
Mm.
kind of live and eat and pray
Yeah.
over the words. But there are certain experiences and that are just so universal. They transcend
Mm.
the pain and um, the shock of certain things, the shock and comprehending it. Um, so Rame, I was contemplating this, and for some reason I thought of you living a writer's life in Barcelona, and just kind of romanticizing the way that goes. And at some point, there was this maybe misconception, not necessarily, that being a writer, being a poet, is a solitary life, a solitary exercise. Um, how important do you believe it is to a poet's creative growth to have this engagement that is received through having interaction and engagement like salons or open mics, and just basically being amongst your peers and hearing them share their own work?
I think it's necessary. For me, at least,
Okay.
in my opinion, in my personal experience, it's 100% necessary. I think it's the only way to grow. Actually, I went back to poetry, like to poetry understood as in events and so on.
Hmm.
And I only started to improve, like really improve, when I was able to share what I was doing with other people. It's true that you can actually just read books and then you can learn by yourself. I agree with that, and some people don't really want to get involved in the scene, but I think there's things that we don't control that you can find there, and those are the things that really matter to grow. In my case, I'm in a big city where there's plenty of events.
Hmm.
I wouldn't romanticize it. It's not as romantic as it sounds, even if it's Barcelona. But actually, we have two different cultural scenes. We have two different languages. There's also international events. So there's a lot of things going on. Now we are after pandemics, in an after pandemics moment.
Hmm.
But if I think about it, every day you can go to an open mic or a poetry event in Barcelona. If you want to, you have that option, and that's awesome. And we have the events, and also what we do, we meet with other poets more like in a casual way,
Hmm.
and then we do exercises which are really, really, really useful. And I don't know, I think it's necessary. I don't have a word to say, like essential, necessary and essential.
I
At the
get
same
that.
time, there's many events you don't go to, and there's also institutional events that for some people can be a bit boring, or where you
Hmm.
don't really connect with other people. It's more just about, I don't know, going. Some people just do it like this. What I really like is reading other people, talking with them about
Hmm.
poetry. And that's what I really enjoy. That's what publishing books and publishing poetry gives you, right? The other things are just, I don't know, obscure words that you can just remove. It's a
Of course, that
metaphor,
makes
but yeah.
yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Having to have that connection and the importance of it. You just mentioned something that I was super curious about. You mentioned about the scene there, and so it kind of goes back to something that really interested me in your bio, talking about the Barcelona underground scene. That sounds so enticing. It may be more enticing, like just like I'm trying to romanticize, but please tell us more about things that go on, main hubs, events, go tos that poets just congregate at there. Tell us about the scene.
Underground scene sounds paradoxically a little bit fancy, but what we have is open mics. So almost every day we have open mics, sometimes only poetry, sometimes with other arts. So there's this mix, and it's a big, small world. So we actually end up meeting each other. Like, you go to a place, you can go by yourself, and you know
Mhm.
you're gonna find all your colleagues or other poets there. And even if you don't know anyone, you're gonna meet people, and you're gonna end it up talking until 4 a.m. or
That sounds
5 or
lovely.
6 or 7 or wherever you want to go home, right? And so what I really like, it's open mics. There's a lot of quality. It's actually awesome. And we have some associations, we call it associations,
Mhm.
in some places, almost for free. Actually, most of the events are or free,
Oh,
or you pay what you consider at the end. I don't know how you call that in English. We call it inverse price, something like this.
yeah, there's like a sliding scale.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and at the same time we have a lot of readings, sometimes like with lots of poets. And actually a month ago we had a reading, a multilingual reading, which is
Oh, okay.
amazing, and it was in
Sounds
English and
amazing.
Spanish at the same time. So every person reads in the language they want, different topics. And that's pretty much it. Well, there's many things that I could say about the scene. And yeah, and at the same time, you have all the institutional events.
Mhm.
We have one day in the year, in every year, the 23rd of April, which is Saint Jordi, and
Mhm.
in Barcelona, all the city is full of books, and all the writers are there signing books, and there's many readings. That day is crazy. We also buy a rose. Well, guys buy a rose for girls, or vice versa.
Uh-huh.
And it's the romantic book day. So maybe Barcelona
Romantic
is,
book day. Wow.
yeah, I don't know how to
I don't,
call it.
yeah, I'm halfway between loving that idea and depending on the part of the year repulsed by the idea. Love and love and repulsion, they go together.
Yeah, it's
It
actually a
sounds
coincidence because it's the book day because of
mhm,
Cervantes that died, that
yeah.
it's his anniversary, and at the same time it's the Rose Day. So it's a coincidence, but then you live all the 2 days at the same time. It's
That
yeah.
sounds great. It sounds like a organically made festival that was kind of not meant to be put together, but it was put together and it worked out. I love that idea. Um,
Next April.
I know, like I'm taking the invitation whether or not it's extended. One of these
Of course,
Aprils, I'm going to
it
be
is
there.
extended.
Yes, it's like you're almost offering me the rose. It's like a one of those bad reality TV. Offer you a rose to come to Barcelona. Well, it was an absolute pleasure, Remei, to have you on our show, our wonderful Poets Lighthouse. Um, and I just want our viewers to please continue to keep up to date on what Remei what's going on in her poet's life with her works by visiting her blog, www.reinterpretaciones.blogspot.com, and following her on Instagram at Remei.Manzanero and Twitter at Remei underscore go. That's her first name underscore GO. We appreciate you tuning in weekly to all of our shows and our programming and showing us your wonderful support, viewers, by subscribing to our YouTube channel, the Poetry Global Network, and following us at the PGN Official all across our social media. Have a very good evening.